Good afternoon, everyone. It's 3:55 on my watch, so we'll wait for a few more moments so others can join us. And for today, we'll do something similar to this sample application. You'll notice there are slider bars here, and if I slide them, you'll also notice that the color of the text view on top, not only does it reflect the current value of the slider that was moving, it also changes color. So we'll do something like this once more people are in, and hopefully you guys will be able to code on your own. But if not, this session is recorded, and I will paste eventually yung code that we'll be using here. So just sit back, get drinks or food, and we'll start in about 5 minutes. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And so I hope everyone's ready for this afternoon session of MOBCOM1 and our continuing journey in creating Android applications. For today, we'll look at another control. And some of you might be wondering why we're doing that because since most everyone here is starting with Android um, app development, uh, one of the first things that people will need to get used to, of course, is manipulating the widgets that serve as your or parts of your user interface. So don't worry, we will be looking at other stuff as we move on, including being able to access data and save data with your app, as well as doing some things with internet-based information. So for today, we'll do something similar to this app up here. So you'll notice there are three slider bars here. They are actually called seek bars if we are being exact about it. And what they're doing is if I drag the seek bars to a particular item, the text view on top changes color and also shows the value of that current seek bar. So, as with most anything, we'll start off with a new project. So again, at this point in time, everyone should be comfortable with creating a project in Android Studio. So I skip showing that and I start off immediately with the project itself. So our interface is simple enough. We go to activity main.xml, and as a refresher, again, each screen in an Android app is connected to an activity, and each screen, or more properly, a layout file. A layout file is a resource. You can find it under the rest folder under layout. So we only have one, activity main.xml. And then each layout file actually has one default control at the start. So this is technically called a view group. Okay, so yung constraint layout na yan, uh, or the so yun yung medyo confusing because this entire file is a layout file. And then inside your layout file, you have at least one layout control. So this layout control establishes a view group. So bakit view group? Because again, all controls that you put here are considered parts of the view. And by being part of a view, each one of them is actually a small specialized view object. Okay, so yun yung main object on top of a button or a text view's inheritance hierarchy. At the very top is the view object. And then each one of the controls are actually children of that view object. So the constraint layout is a view group. And then inside that view group are controls. And the reason you have a view group is that it defines how your controls will be arranged on the screen. So as we've seen, because we've used constraint layouts exclusively since we started, with a constraint layout, yes, Dom, I will have a short sample on Firebase, enough so that people can get started on it and use it for various na to, various data needs of your app. So I have one view group here because of the constraint layout, and I have this view, or since we've started, this is the text view control. Uh, I'll just move this up. Well, actually, uh, I'll remove its lower constraint. So I'll keep this one and I'll rename this. I'll change its ID to txt result. And then I'll also make it occupy the entire width. And I will put the text in the center. Text alignment. There. Probably make the text bigger than 14 SP. And probably change its text color to something lighter, but not exactly all white. So something that's going to be lighter than black. I'll just make it mint green. So I let it stay there. And then what we want is your seat bar. Okay, so that's the control that we're looking for. It's called a that is a strange sound. Anyway, so what we want is a seek bar. So you can search for it, or you can just go to widgets, and you should see seek bar there. There are two versions. There's discrete and then the seek bar. We just want the ordinary seek bar. So I'll pull one in, and then I'll put this right at the center of the screen. And I'll make it occupy the entire entire width of the screen. So that's one. And then I'll name this as SB red factor. So I'll get another one. And one more. Anchor this to the bottom of the first one. Anchor to the left and right. Make it occupy the entire width. And then I'll name this as SB green. And then for this last one, I'll drag it to the bottom. Jeez. My mouse doesn't want to. Not vertically constrained. Huh. For some reason, it doesn't want to. There you go. So I have three seek bars now, and I'll change this one to yung ID to SB blue. So if we look at the sample app that we're going to build, there are three seek bars and changes color. So we are going to use the RGB values for our seek bars to form the values for red, green, and blue. So the names for each of those seek bars are SB red, SB green, and SB blue. As we see from the constraint layout here, this one is txt result, which is a text view. And I will just pull this down so it's anchored there, and it's somewhat in the middle in between all those seek bars. So now I'll run this so we just see what it looks like. Okay, so this is what we have right now. Our seek bars are still at the default color. They are fully animated already, but no functionality yet because we haven't coded it in. We have our text box here. Now we can start coding. So, unlike the button, where meron na tayong on-click and to easily capture clicks on that button, we just define a function and associate it with the on-click event. Now, yung seek bar, when we want to make use of it, um, doesn't rely on on-click. So, although it has an on-click event, it doesn't really rely on that. What it relies on is listening to changes in the position of the bar. So when we're using a seek bar, this dragging motion triggers on seek bar change. So unlike the button where the important event is on click, for the seek bar, the important event is called on seek bar change. Which triggers a couple of methods on the SeekBar object. So what we'll do is first, I'll create the object variables for the SeekBars. And to make it simple, I'll just name them red, green, and blue to represent the color values that they will be keeping track of. Blue, and then private. Ah, nausi lang ako. Red, green, blue. And proper order. So I'm creating SeekBar objects that adds this import on top. And I also want to create one for the text view. Result text view. So that takes care of the variables that I need to associate with real controls on the screen. So we initialize them as usual in the onCreate function. So again, the importance of putting in the proper ID means you can easily find your controls, and I'll just cut and paste this. Green, and then blue, blah, 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 red, green. And then we also have to initialize the by ID. This is a text view. So that takes care of our variables. So as I mentioned, on SeekBar change is the event that we have to watch out for. Unlike on click, where you can find it in the attributes of the control, for on SeekBar change, we have to actually code for it. And there are two ways of handling that. One way is to associate three different sets of code for each of the seek bars. So again, to repeat and make it clear, one way to approach it is to create listeners for on SeekBar change, or more proper, to create to associate a listener for on SeekBar change to each of these seek bars. So we have three seek bars right now named red, green, and blue. Their actual name is SB red, SB green, and SB blue. But once you get to the code here, it's red, green, and blue. For Android to detect that someone has changed that progress bar, there must be an on seek bar change listener. So there are two ways to approach it. One way is to code for each one. The other way is I can create, or I can make all of them listen for progress bar changes or seek bar changes for the entire screen. So hindi lang individual, but when Android detects any seek bar on the screen to change, um, it will do something about it. So that's how we'll handle this. We won't do individual code for red, green, and blue in terms of the on seek bar change listener. What we'll do is we'll make the app aware first that if there's a seek bar change, it has to react to it. So to do that, we add something in our class declaration. So this is the first time everyone will be seeing this, because so far the only thing that's there is app compat activity, which tells Kotlin that main activity inherits all of its characteristics from app compat activity. So we'll do a second thing. What we'll do is we'll call SeekBar and then add an on SeekBar change listener. So what does this do to our app? What this does is to make the entire screen of the app aware of changes on any seek bar that's visible. So kung meron akong 20 na seek bar doon and you change one of them, the app will be able to detect it. Now, after adding this, you'll notice merong error. So we'll do this again. I'll click here and then I'll get the light bulb. So the first thing that it will suggest is to add an import for the change listener. So we'll do that. I still have the error. I'll click here and I get a suggestion. So what I'm doing now is because I added the on seek bar change listener to the entire app. Uh, this is actually not a class, but it's an interface. So if you guys remember your Java, well, can anyone remember what an interface does in Java? Just off the top of your heads, no pressure, no nothing. If anyone remembers what an interface does in Java. Meron ba? No, yes. Siret, sir, sabihin mo na lang. In a way, yes, an interface allows mo. Pero my question was, what does an interface do? I mean, yes, it can allow multiple inheritance. And for those wondering why I'm asking that question, it's because, again, if you're learning a language, you don't memorize it, you actually try to understand uh, the underlying reason for why things are there. So thank you for that. Determine constants that can be used or called in other. Um, Pwede in a way, Paolo. The idea is there. Yung terminology lang yung medyo meron akong halangan. Ayun. But that's a good attempt at the answer because it's actually near to the answer to what um, what interfaces are for. So actually yung ano lang dyan talaga are terms used. Anyone else? So thank you, Dom. Thank you, Paolo, for your contributions. Anybody else remember or want to guess what interfaces do in Java? Because they do the same thing in Kotlin, which is what on SeekBar change listener is. And so one clue for those who are still trying to think of the answer, one clue is what you can see on my screen right now. Um, and that's also why I'm saying Paolo got it partly correct. Yun lang terms yung medyo alangan. If you look at my screen right now, and you're looking at that red light bulb, and the suggested correction, it says implement members. Okay? So the answer to what interfaces do is it forces programmers using that interface to implement something. Okay, so bakit? Kasi um, in the spirit of object-oriented programming, for example, I'm creating a generic class called airplane. So yung airplane, or sige, sabihin natin, mas generic pa din, flying vehicle. Yan. So a flying vehicle, by its name, yan. So something similar to abstract classes. So I'll finish my example. So I'm creating the parent class flying vehicle. And flying vehicle or something that flies, yun yung pinaka-generic niya. But if we look at different objects that fly, they are able to achieve flight in different ways. So yung birds flap their wings, jets have jet engines, and then propeller-driven planes have their propeller. So all of those describe flying, but they do it in different ways. So ganun din yung abstract classes, and then in more specific terms, interfaces. So when someone creates an interface, they're saying that in the future, I'm expecting some other programmers to need to do the same thing I did. But I'm giving them the freedom to define how they do it. So again, look back at the example of flight. Everyone flies in a different way. So you can think of the fly interface as defining generic functions that need to be implemented. So, limba, start flying, stop flying, while in flight are three functions. So, it's the same thing here. See on SeekBar change listener is an interface, and it requires the programmer using the interface to actually implement those. Implement isn't complicated. Most of the time, it just means have the method signature there, and that qualifies already as implementing it. Then going back to what Paolo said about abstract classes, it's also the same thing. Abstract classes define certain methods that need to be implemented by the inheriting class, yung child class nila. Okay, so example nung abstract class, appcompat activity is abstract because it allows its child classes like si main activity to implement on create. So I'll try to correct this error now. I'll select implement members, and then you'll notice there are three methods here. So every time you use the on SeekBar change listener, you are required to implement these three methods. And click on OK. You'll notice that Android Studio automatically adds them at the end after the onCreate function. Kasi yung onSeekBar change listener is actually listening in the entire screen of the app. So hindi na siya nakafocus on one single SeekBar. It's looking at the entire screen and saying, if that has 1 to 50 SeekBars there, I will catch any changes to the slider. Yan. So you'll notice this gets added automatically. My error is gone. And meron lang nakasingit dyan na to do, which I find funny, but also helpful. It's in Kotlin, and what to do does is just to remind you what you have to do. So in case you're fond of documenting your own code, you can make use of to do. And so we have three functions here, all related to on SeekBar change listener. So yung last two, they just look at when someone starts dragging that circle, ito, and then the last one is when someone stops. So here, I can put code. I'll remove the to do. So I'll use result, which is our text view. Put in a message. And I'll use the same thing here with just a different. And so three methods were added. All three methods were required by on SeekBar change listener. So before I added these two lines, I did not need to type anything. Okay, so far, questions, comments, or clarifications? Anyone? Questions? Clarifications? All right. Thank you, Lance. Um, for the rest, I assume silence means no questions so far. So thank you, thank you. So you'll notice the name of the function are pretty descriptive: on start tracking touch and on stop tracking touch. We'll leave this first function after this particular demo because I will actually delete these two lines later. In this particular sample, I don't need to know when it starts or stops. So I'll run the app again. So here are my seek bars again. And then when I drag them, nothing happens. So I might scratch my head, or, well, I'll wonder why the heck is nothing happening. I already have this. I already implemented the three functions, and yet nothing happens yet. Okay? So, sabi na nga ni Sir, by adding this one, the app will be watching the entire screen for any changes din sa SeekBar. Okay? So, when you're using the SeekBar the first three times, this is a common mistake. The one thing that you also need to do, and I'll add it here now, is the seek bars right now are initialized, but they don't know where to get their listener. So I have to do this. Set on seek bar change listener, and then attach it to the application. So by doing this, red, green. So by doing this, I'm now making the individual seek bars aware that if any touches happen on the screen, some of those touches might be their own seek bars. So yun yung reason for doing some of this. We never did it for the buttons. You can also do this for buttons and on click. Kasi for on click, um, practice wise, work wise, I don't need to connect the on-click buttons to the main screen kasi may on-click event na siya and I can tie things or actions directly to each button. For the seek bar, again, we're implementing it in this way kasi I do not want to repeat these functions for each one of these. Okay, so yun yung alternative. If we weren't doing this, I would be showing you guys an example where we define each of these functions for each one of these. So, ang mangyayari nun, you'll be doing this 9 times kasi 3 na sliders yan or 3 seek bars. So, I've connected this. I'll run it again. Okay. So, I'll try that again. Oops. And my app crashed. Okay. Because I forgot this. Yan. So, on progress change, keeps track of all the events in between start and stop. So, I forgot to remove that to do. Though it shouldn't have crashed. But anyway. So, that's why it crashed earlier. I forgot to remove the to do item. But now, while I'm dragging it, that triggers on start tracking touch. And when I stop, it triggers on stop tracking touch. Okay? Pero hindi yan yung gusto nating gawin. So right now, we do know that our seek bars are now detected. So they're detected. We'll go back to the code. So what we actually want is should be able to. So what we want is this. We want the value appearing here. So RGB is 0 to 255. So 255 and then 0. I'll make that later so you'll still. So the edge is 255 and then this value here is 0. So RGB is 255, 0 to 255 na range for each of 3 values, red, green, and blue. So the next thing we'll do is we'll have the value of the seek bar appear on the text view. So I'll go back to my code. I'll remove this now. Well, I won't. I'll just comment it out so it won't move. So the one we want, so that we get the value, is on progress change. So you'll notice that on progress change has three parameters from user seek bar and the middle one, which is progress. So it keeps track of its own progress. It's an int value. And if we want it to appear in that text view, all we need to do is this one. Result dot set text sure progress dot to. So since it's an int, we have to specifically say to convert itself to a string. So just one simple line, result dot set text progress to string, and I'll run this. So now, we are somewhat there. But do you guys notice a problem? So I now see the values for my sliders. Okay, but do you guys notice a problem? Yan. So thank you, Paolo. Si Lance says di nagbabago ang kulay, and then Paolo says 100 lang. So we'll take each of those separately. We'll start with the 100 thing. So the slider, the seek bars default to 100 as its max value. Yan. So 0 to 100 yun. So we have to fix that because each of our values should be 255 at its max. So to change that, there's a property called max. So that one's a simple fix. Red, green, red. Max equals 255 blue dot max equals 255. And then, in terms of the user interface, it would be better if these bars represent RGB, red, green, and blue. So for that, I'll go back to the layout and select the red seek bar. So that one is easy enough. It's a matter of the two things. The thumb, lagi ko nakakalimutan. Thumb tint. Thumb tint. So the thumb tint is the color of the circle. Kasi thumb daw yung pinangkiklik mo dun. So I'll change the first one to red. And then I look for a better green. Thumb tint. Yeah. Crap. Wala mo ibang green. This is also why you may want to modify the color value. So I'll just pick that crappy green. And then yung last would be blue. Purple. So this looks blue, I think. Purple yun. Anyway. So the other one, is the progress tint. So progress tint is the other color that we want. Wala rin magandang blue. So this is what I get for being lazy about the color. So progress tint is that line after the circle. I should also change the tint of this one. Oh no. And then yung last, I should also change this to red. Yan. So we'll look at this one first. I'll run it. And then we'll get dun sa sinabi ni Lance na the color doesn't change. Okay, so we now have them in, yeah, medyo purple pala yun. Anyway, I was dumb enough not to make my own color, so I pay for it with this one. And so when I drag red, may red na line na that happens. Green, and then blue that looks more purple in my eyes right now. And so we get to the last one where we need to change the color of that entire text view. So we'll go back and add our final. So in Android and in Kotlin, in Java, there's an RGB function. It's the same thing with Kotlin. There's an RGB function. So what I'll do is I'll first make three variables called red type int, and then I'll get the value from the current value of the SeekBar's progress, and I use to int to make sure it's an int. So same thing, this one is green, then I change this to green, and then this last one I just make it BL or blue, and so I get the three values for RG and B. Ay, sorry, um, I forgot to show. So with the max value defined, if I pull to the rightmost side, it now says 255. If I go to the leftmost, it says 0. So sakto for the color ranges, 0 to 255. And now, just one more line to complete the whole thing. We want results, background. So you'll notice that the color value accepted here for set background color is an integer. So there's the color object, and the color object actually has an RGB function to let you define colors. So just like any other thing, we need to import color, and then we have RGB. So we have those three: red, green, and blue. So it's pretty short, and I'll run this. And we now have this. So if I do this, and then I do this, if I pull them all to the very edge, that should be white. And then if I make them all 0, this should be black. And so very quickly, we are able to integrate seek bars into our application if you ever need them. Any questions, comments, or clarifications so far? Um, Gusto mong lumabas individually yung values nila, Paolo? Tama ba? Dun sa text view. Ano lang yan? Um, so here, um, so we would have result because we already get the progress values. Set text. Ah. Yes. Because if we don't, paano niyang malalaman kung ano yung gusto mong gamitin? And so you do need to specify the ID because if not, ano yung mangyayari? So anyone, or kahit si Paul, if we don't specify the ID for each SeekBar, what happens? Well, si listener hindi siya nalilito kasi generic nga to eh. If you look at it, it just catches any change. Pero, since it catches any and all changes to the progress bar, for the program to know which value of the progress bar you want to use, you still have to mention the specific bar. So, hindi siya nalilito. But from the context of being able to display it, you have to tell Android which progress bar value you want to show. So, so if I just use the current progress, that would be just for that bar. Yan. Kaya merong ganito. So I can get the current value of each progress bar. Okay, clear? Clear ba? Ayong, sorry. Ano yun? Katangahan ko yun. Ginamit ko na nga eh, di ba? Yan. So thank you for pointing that out. That was me being dumb. So here, I could just, you know, kasi dineclare ko na nga. Other questions, sir? I feel so dumb. BL dot. So, yan yung more proper. Kasi nga may variable na ako. Other questions or clarifications? Yan. So, some of you might be wondering, sir, bakit ganito yung demo? This is to show you guys that different controls have different attributes, properties, and functionality. So if you want to use them, it's a matter of, I'm familiar with most of them, so I can pretty much guess what I need to do. Pero when you're, salamat din, Paolo. Thank you for pointing it out. Minsan, you need a second set of eyes. So going back to my point, I wanted to demo this so that you guys see that whether you're an expert already or not, if you want to use something in Android, it will require some research. So for example, this SeekBar, I'm familiar with it already, so I can code it like this. But if you're starting from scratch or you're going, sir, paano ko malalaman yan? That's where the research part comes in. And the research can be done more effectively if you understand what's needed at the most basic. So, since it's object-oriented programming, you can just type the name of the object, hit the dot, tapos lalabas yung mga functions niya because of IntelliSense in Android Studio. Or yan, yung sabi ni Paolo, reading docs. It does take a lot of work. It gets doubly hard if kinabisado mo lang and you did not try to understand what's really happening. So, this is the, well, hindi naman last, but this is the last time I'll highlight a particular control. Bloated features. Maraming ganyang controls eh. So this is the last time I'll highlight a control for demo purposes, except for when we're doing data already, and we'll make use of some controls that are specifically geared towards displaying data. So in the following lectures, we'll try to go into more advanced topics, and hopefully you guys are still excited about it. So yun, if there are no more questions for today, thank you for spending time with me. And you can call it a day for MOBCOM1. Thank you for those who are active in chat, si Paolo tsaka si Dom. And that's it. Stay safe, guys. Actually, Weird Young from user, eh. It's supposed to be able to distinguish which user is actually operating the SeekBar. Oo nga eh, pero I haven't been able to use it properly. So yun, I apologize for that. For most of the stuff I've used the SeekBar for, I never needed see from user. Kaya medyo hindi ko rin siya, ano. So, di ba, medyo weird na bakit siya boolean. Such a weird thing. Actually, I'll try to look up more deeper bakit ganun siya. Naalala ko na. I remember what this thing is for. It's used to detect if the progress bar was, kaya siya boolean, if the progress bar was changed by the user, meaning pumunta ako dun sa app and then I physically clicked on it and then dragged it, or something in the code actually changed it. Yun. Naalala ko na. Thank you, Dom. Yan din yung nasa ano eh. So if this value changes because I dragged it, that's true dun sa from user. If programmatically nagbago siya, that's false dun sa from user. Magano ka lang, change the attribute for progress. Wait. Hala, hindi ko maalala yung ano. Wait. So, yeah, parang ganyan. So parang ganyan siya. Which would trigger a false dun sa on progress change na from user parameter. Wala pa. Hindi pa naka-release yung Quizlands. It hasn't been released yet. Pero I'll release it after today. I mean, after this session. The deadline is June 19. Yeah. So thank you for asking that. For those still here, yung quiz shouldn't take you long. It's 10 questions of various styles. May multiple choice, may fill in the blank. And if I remember correctly, you get 3 tries at the quiz. So if you think na mababa yung score nyo sa umpisa, then you can go back and continue it until maubos yung attempts nyo. So I remember setting it to 3. I'll just check it. And it will be released later today. Alright? Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Paulo. Thank you, Dom. Anything else? Guys, reminder lang, please do check Neo, especially those who have missing submissions. It's not my job to nag each and every one of you na merong kulang. It's your responsibility as a student to know what items are missing from your submissions. So, with that, please do check Neo. I do accept late work. So, okay lang yun. May konting deduction lang kung late. Late is better than zero. Late is better than not submitting because not submitting equals zero in your grade sheet. So with that being said, there are no more questions. Please do check Neo and enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe, guys. I'll see you all again next week for more advanced items in MOBCOM. Okay, thank you. Thank you.